welcome to Homekeepers. Can you join me for a cup of tea today? I think you would really get a lot out of what we're going to talk about, because this is a day I look forward to each and every month, because Deborah Ray, known as the First Lady of Health, is back with us. She's on every month, and I got a letter just this week. I was looking through some of your mail, and it said, P.S. I just love Deborah Ray. Well, that's universal, really, for anybody who knows her. She's here today. In fact, she's going to join me in the kitchen. And we're going to talk about how vitamin D can reduce your maybe chances or propensity to breast cancer. She's got the latest studies here. But there's something I want to find out about. And there's really seems to be a lot of information out there now. I know Suzanne Summers has written a book on it, and she's real enthusiastic about, I would call it, manipulating your hormones as you get older. And I hope Deborah has some answers for that. I'm very curious about it. But anyway, we're going to talk about your health. We've got a whole lot of things that we want to talk about, and we never really get to all of them, but we keep trying. And we certainly welcome any questions you have. We'll try to get it on the show down the road. And I'm going to join her for some black bean soup. But before I do, I want to again offer you my daughter's CD with 22 songs on it of just pure harp music. It's probably the best bargain we've ever offered you, and we'll send it to you for that gift of at least $20. It's called Unspoken Praise, and I'm telling you, music can be very healing, and harp music is the most healing in my opinion. So if you use your credit card, call 1-800-229-0059 or write to me at Homekeepers, Box 6922, Clearwater, Florida 33758. And we are getting low on these, so if you have noticed it really through the years I've offered it, this is the time to get it. Hope you'll take advantage of that. And now, hi there.
Hello.
We've got
in the kitchen. I'm coming full circle. 1980, Herman Bailey and I in the kitchen.
That is right. Do you remember what you fixed with Herman?
We did, I had brought an electric wok, and we did a stir fry with shrimp. And of course, he and I were talking, and then all of a sudden he said, well, we've got 2 minutes. And it's like, wait a minute, we haven't even started the recipe yet.
Yeah, I remember when they rolled that thing out there, and it usually had to have a hot plate or something, because it wasn't a working kitchen like this one. But this is really good for you, isn't it?
Black beans. We think of antioxidants as fresh fruits and vegetables, and don't think that that color is a sign that these are rich in antioxidants. So if people who think, oh gosh, I can't really stretch my budget this month for lots of fresh fruits and vegetables, think beans, because the dark color beans means they're rich in antioxidants, just like fresh fruits and vegetables.
Now, is that different than like your white northern beans, which are also nutritious?
Also nutritious, also a good source of protein, but the darker the bean, the more the antioxidant, just like the berry. The darker the berry, the higher the antioxidant content.
Do you know, Deborah, what's really been in my mind the last few days I'm driving around, and your mind wonders, how much I appreciate the way I was raised as a child when it comes to nutrition. Now, a potato chip was an absolute luxury, and
soda. Once a week, never. Saturday night, parents went out, I went to Grandma's house. My sister and brother, we had one soda once a week.
But I mean, we had beans, and sometimes the entree was macaroni and cheese with some vegetables and things. And I keep looking back, and I thought, ladies out there, if you're raising a family, don't sweat it. Yeah. Make it simple. And my parents had 4 children. None of us had a serious illness. None of us.
And at that point, we didn't have, 1 in 91 children with autism and attention deficit and behavior problems. We ate simpler, and you have to wonder that it isn't a combination of things, and food is a particular key.
We had beans and cornbread on Saturday night, and on Sunday, Mom made a roast. I can remember her sliding that in the oven as we were going out the door to Sunday school. And I thought, we make too big a deal out of this. This is simple. This is not rocket science. Come up with 5 or 6 good, simple meals and tell them to eat it. That's another thing. We ate what was there. We didn't.
Exactly.
They didn't run to the store to get us.
You get what you get, and you don't pitch a fit.
Yeah. All right. We're going to throw those in there.
That's right.
Now,
1 pound.
this is one thing I learned
yeah.
about this, that you go ahead and dump those in. I'll pour the water
Okay.
on top of it.
1 pound.
That's
dried.
a pound.
Mm-hmm. Black
And
beans.
the recipe said to kind of just move them around in hot tap water until that skin began to. See, do you notice how the skin's broken on that? I never heard of such a thing. We want 3 tablespoons of this.
Olive oil. Onions. Great.
I'm telling
source
you,
of-
this is a good recipe. I thought when I first saw it, it was
Too simple?
very, very simple. Yeah, very simple and not a whole lot in it. But that's 3 tablespoons of olive oil, and this is 1 big onion.
Of course, onions, great sources of quercetin, again, natural antioxidant, and bioflavonoid, natural antihistamine.
Oh, right. Where did I read? Somewhere just, this is Cajun, and I had never used it before. Susan, my friend, brought it in, but I thought it would be way too hot, but it wasn't. And then if you want to put this in, and then I'll get the one that we already made. I'm anxious for you to.
So we're talking about half a jar of salsa.
My opinion of this was something you would taste in a really good Spanish restaurant. So we've got some brown rice here. Put it on the bottom. I know this sounds dumb, but I would take this over a steak.
But think about it. You could do this first thing in the morning or even the night before, put it in the refrigerator in the morning, put it in the crock pot.
Put it in the crock pot.
And have,
Here, Stephanie and I, we used to fix separate. We don't do that anymore. Let me know what you think, though.
that was a great flavor. Great
It really
seasoning.
is. You're going to have to trust us on that.
Yeah, good seasoning. Oh, that's good.
Yep. That's what I'm going to have for dinner tonight. Right there.
Complete protein. Beans and rice together, complete
It's
protein.
a little salad. We're on our way. All right. If you want this recipe, did we put this in? Yeah, we did.
We did.
The salsa, and then you bring it to a boil and then let it simmer, just barely simmer, I think, for 3 or 4 hours, or you can put it in the crock pot in the morning. Okay, the information's coming up on your screen, and then we're going to talk about some things that could affect your life, so stay with us. Have one.
If you would like a copy of today's recipe, please send your request along with a gift of $5 or more to Homekeepers, P.O. Box 6922, Clearwater, Florida 33758.
It's always good to have Deborah regular here once a month.
Good soup.
And the problem is just trying to narrow the subject matter down because there's so much out there. And
I always remember what Jeff Blumberg told me. He teaches nutrition at Tufts University. The nutritional literature doubles every year. The medical literature doubles every 5 years. So think how vast that is to keep up with. So if your doctor is not really up on nutrition, I mean, it's so difficult to keep up on it because it develops and it advances so rapidly.
I'm glad to know that, more so than, than your drugs. And don't get mad at your doctor when there's so much you could find out yourself, right? Now, breast cancer is a plague.
Epidemic.
My daughter has had it. I just found out 2 weeks ago that my niece discovered 3rd stage, and she had her first chemo yesterday.
It attacks women at younger ages than ever before. We don't know why. We don't know why.
I have a suspicion it's food, but like I say, we don't know.
Chemicals. Of course, breast tissue is fatty tissue, and that's where the toxins particularly reside. And over a long period of time ups our risk. But think about it. I mean, even you hear about people that have a special gene that puts them at risk of breast cancer. But that's 8% of women. The other 92%, it's how we take care of those genes. And we forget about that power, the spirit within us, teaching us to make wise lifestyle choices, that 92% of women could perhaps prevent or even reduce their risk of breast cancer by learning to make wiser lifestyle choices.
Yeah, let's talk about that one, that percentage that has the gene.
Right.
Now, those are the ones that you'll hear once in a while that a lady will make a choice to remove both breasts.
Prophylactic mastectomy.
When there's not that much evidence of...
Right. And what they don't tell you is that it doesn't eliminate your risk of breast cancer, because that is not isolated. You can still get breast cancer after a prophylactic mastectomy. So there is a new study out just this week. I'm so excited about it. They took a group of these women that had that positive genetic map, BRCA1 positive for breast cancer. So they're at high risk. Gave them vitamin D. They found if they were able to time it, and of course this is beyond my science and medical background, that if they could give them at least 3 months of therapeutic levels of vitamin D, they could change that genetic expression. And those women, at least to the length of the study, never developed breast cancer.
That's exciting.
The vitamin D changed genetic expression. That's so amazing.
So how much do they need and how do they take it? Vitamin D comes from the sun, doesn't it?
It comes from the sun activating certain substances in our skin. It's certainly, when you and I grew up, we were weaned on cod liver oil, so you can get it from food sources as well. But we now know that so many people are so afraid of skin cancer that we cover up, we use sunscreen, that the vast majority of Americans do not have enough vitamin D. And in places like Canada, where you're at a latitude where you're likely never to get enough vitamin D, they recommend to take at least 1,000 units a day because it's very safe. There's been at least one study from Boston University that you can take 1 million units, don't try this at home, but 1 million units a day for 6 months, and it was entirely safe. Now, some of us have special needs for vitamin D, so your doctor can do a blood test, see where you stand, and now we know, the optimal range that we should keep our vitamin D levels in.
Overall, just as a matter of lifestyle, is it good for a woman to just take vitamin D? No, she gets it from the sun and all, but to take a supplement as well?
As important as calcium for strong bones. And of course, we are at risk for a number of reasons for bone thinning. So very important for women in particular. Linked to preventing 17 different cancers, including breast cancer, good for our heart health, good for our brain, our cognitive function. So many reasons that it's important for women, particularly women who may be starting a family, because of course we've seen evidence in years past of rickets with women and children who are vitamin D deficient.
Are there any studies, because you brought up the skin cancer, now, are there any studies that Americans are just a little bit over the board on covering? I mean, I played in the sun. I think of my uncle who's in the tractor all day long in that Colorado sun. I don't think he ever had skin cancer.
There is conflicting information out there that there is some evidence that perhaps melanoma is linked to low levels of vitamin D. So there are a growing number of physicians who say 10 minutes of sun exposure every single day is optimal. So too little is not good, too much is not good, but we need to get some sun exposure.
You don't want to go out there and just get burned.
Right. Of course, that's the other thing that you have taught so many people about is Dr. Young's Power Shake. When that sun, or that membrane of our cells is right, the sun exposure, we don't burn. So that's how we can tell that we're eating right and making wise choices by remaking that cell membrane, and we don't burn.
I had my Power Shake this morning, and I had fresh strawberries in it and bananas, but I also put a whole fistful of fresh spinach in it. And you really can't taste the spinach, but it does change the color. That's not as palatable, but then I keep thinking of all the rich antioxidants and stuff from the spinach going in there. Is
Sure, how we were raised, greens, kale, spinach.
Yeah.
We may not have liked it as kids, but...
Now, I think you sent me this information, 80% heart disease preventable?
Yes, yes.
That if people would move 10 minutes each day,
Right.
Come on.
Right. And of course, the...
Walk around the block
Right.
one time and you reduce as much as 80% for heart disease.
The Harvard nurses study and the Harvard physician study, doctor study, has taught us that as much as 83% of heart disease are the lifestyle choices that we make. Activity is one of them. And again, activity linked to breast cancer. We can reduce our risk of breast cancer and heart disease just by moving. We know that that activity, not just, something that's a feel good, it's actually good medicine for us.
I think that scripture, Ephesians 5:15, be careful how you walk, not as unwise, but as wise, making the most of your time because the days are evil. But I pulled out that word walk because Jesus walked everywhere.
Right.
We see him on a donkey once, we see him on a boat, and that's about it. He walked everywhere. And to think that this study would say, move 10 minutes each day. And then it says your sleep is important. Well, if you don't move, you're probably not going to sleep good.
Exactly.
And then to stop smoking, that's never been a
But think of our children.
temptation of mine.
We're now, diagnosing children as young as the age of 15 with heart disease. Our children are more inactive than ever before. When, we walked to school, we walked to school bus stops, we walked. It was something we did.
Yeah, and I think some schools have taken recess out, and those that have not, they've made the kids so afraid, they've
Sure.
The Mediterranean diet cuts strokes.
Right.
That's good to know because that's my favorite food.
People don't realize in this country we have 500,000 strokes a year. We tend to think of it in the population of 60, 70, 80 plus, when it's as prevalent under the age of 30 as it is over the age of 70, because we live an inflammatory lifestyle. Going back biblical, eating fresh fruits and vegetables, a little bit of fish and chicken and beef, lots of olive oil. Those are great ways that we can reduce our risk of stroke.
In America, I think it's changing a little bit, but it was always, the entree was the biggest steak you could order.
Right.
And then we have the chickens that are so pumped up with hormones that I've read in places where little boys were all, starting to grow breasts, and the girls were in puberty so much earlier than they should have been. They're pumping up these animals so the animals will have bigger breasts.
Right.
And people are beginning to get a little bit wise to that, don't you think?
To change that plate. That half that plate should be good carbohydrates, fresh fruits, vegetables, a small portion of a protein, the size of the palm of your hand, and a small portion of starch, particularly the whole grains like the brown rice that we had with our soup.
Have you been to the Holy Land?
No.
I've been a couple of times, and the last time in this hotel, two of these guys with us kept looking for a Pizza Hut, and I was so thrilled with the breakfast that had fresh tomatoes, everything fresh, and fish.
I was in Ephesus and had lunch in Ephesus, and the food was locally prepared food. It was wonderful.
And that's your Mediterranean diet.
Exactly.
Yeah. This Dr. Ramon Estrich states that diet is much better than drugs. And I just wonder, there's just a kind of a turnaround in the medical world. You didn't hear that kind of thing 10, 15 years ago.
No. And of course the hospitals are still very slowly catching up, because how many of our local hospitals, much less around the country, recently the Cleveland Clinic for the first time told McDonald's, we're not renewing your lease. Because we recognize that food does make a difference, and particularly when we're stressed, as we would be in a hospital setting, that we can affect immune function by the way that we eat.
I had a doctor in St. Pete. I don't know if he's still with us or not, but I brought this up like 25 years ago, and he was very condescending when he said, my aunt used to always say it must have been something you ate. And I don't think he ever thought anything about food at all.
Right.
Okay.
Those mother's adages. My mother was a big one for that, and the one that I always tell people that I finally knew my mother was right about all of the fish for the brain food and the carrots, and she would tell us, my sister and I in particular, crust of bread for curly hair, and of course we would roll our eyes. Oh, no. There was a study several years ago that actually when you cook dough to make bread, there's a special antioxidant in the crust of bread that's good for us. And it's like, now how did my mother know?
How did she know that?
Eat those crusts for curly hair.
Okay, I remember many years ago, a doctor really tried to put me on estrogen. And I chose not to. And just because I didn't know anything, I thought, okay, if God made your body to go through these certain phases, why are we adding something that he's getting rid of? And so I didn't, and I've never regretted that. And everything, I think, everything that she said it would help, recent studies said it doesn't at all. Now, I've got this red flag too now on the hormones. You're hearing it, how you can manipulate your hormones and seemingly your body's younger.
Right.
What studies have you run across about that?
There have been some studies, but there haven't been long-term studies. And why I think there's a case to be made that if you do need, and I believe it's individual, that there is no one right way, that God makes our genetic maps unique for a reason. And if you took a look at synthetic prescription hormones versus the more naturally sourced hormones, then you need to make the decision that's right for you. But there's been no long-term studies, so you have to look, perhaps back in biblical times when there's evidence of very long life. Women went through these phases naturally. They didn't have. But if you take a look at women in their diets, the beans in particular, those are natural sources of the phytoestrogens and phytoprogesterones, and our body knows what to do with those to balance our hormones naturally. That maybe in the long run, we'll now know that supplementing hormones was perhaps a manipulation that wasn't good for all of us.
Yeah, and like you say, there's no long-range study now, but I know Suzanne Summers is really excited about it. She's written a book on it. I've heard her interview. I think I heard Dr. Oz talk about it once. And I'm just very, very curious about it.
I think if your body needs it, you certainly should educate yourself about, can you do it in a more natural fashion? There's some studies to indicate that you can do that first and foremost with diet. If you choose to use the hormones, certainly go as natural.
So you're saying the beans are natural estrogen? Just the black beans or any beans?
And there's been some, any of the beans are natural sources of the phytoestrogens and phytoprogesterones, and good studies to show that women who eat a lot more beans in their diet have almost none of the hormonal difficulties of women who are eating much more of a processed American Western style.
Look how cheap they are. Yeah. You could make a pot of soup like we did, and
make it last once a week.
Yeah, you could probably freeze it in a little. Oh, gee, that'd be so easy. Okay, another one was the benefits of tea and coffee. They mentioned green tea. I've got to admit, my morning tea is Lipton's, caffeine. I need the kick. Do you drink coffee?
Probably once or twice a week. I like it.
But it also was mentioned in this article.
Source of antioxidants can reduce our risk of stroke. So we tend to demonize it when there's evidence to suggest that it is a good source of antioxidants, can lower our risk of heart disease. So it's a matter of, just because we think if a little is good, a lot is better, and a whole lot is best of all, doesn't really hold up.
I've often wondered if the Lord didn't know you need a little kick in the morning, so he created caffeine.
Look at all the natural sources of caffeine, but when you take it out of nature and start to synthesize it and make it man-made, perhaps that's where we go wrong, where cocoa beans and coffee beans naturally have some caffeine, and tea leaves.
I remember several years ago I read this study where they had made a concerted effort with many, many people about coffee for 10 years. Well, what could be easier than following a coffee drinker? Because that's what they do.
Sure.
And so before I read it, I thought they didn't find anything wrong with it, because they were saying it caused breast cancer, it did this,
Right.
this. And it ruled out everything from this 10-year study with a lot of people in it, except that if you drank 4 or 5 cups a day, you might get a little jittery.
Sure. Some people are sensitive to
Yeah.
it. Right.
Yeah. So there was I was trying to look for it, but we're about out of time. But this was from the Mayo Clinic about staying mentally sharp. And you can see it, I'll show you.
Yeah, what they say now, 1 in 3 Americans are going to die with Alzheimer's. That was sobering in the past couple of weeks.
Yeah. Yeah. But this part of the...
Forgiveness.
Yeah.
The Forgiveness Project at Stanford University. So
It's an actual study on forgiveness and how powerful.
In fact, if people have the opportunity to pull up, it's Dr. Frederick Luskin's book, The Forgiveness Project, and how forgiveness does every cell in our body good. You know, Dr. Candace Pert at NIH said the molecules of emotion, forgiveness is one of those that can actually has measurable effects on our body, positive effects.
You know, that just gives me chills to know how with the Lord everything works together. It has a purpose. And if you don't forgive, you're probably not hurting the person that you're
hope,
angry with.
Faith, you know, being part of a faith community, all those have measurable scientific effects.
I've heard that you can live 2 or 3 days without water. You could live maybe 40 days without food, but you can't live 2 hours without hope. So the Lord knew what he was doing. And as I said earlier, it's always a privilege to have this lady here. And I know that you look forward to it as well. And again, if you would like to have us address anything anything specific, she knows right where to go to get the latest study, and we'll be glad to bring it to you. But until then, please join me next time, remembering there's no higher calling than that of a homekeeper. God bless you.
If you would like a video copy of today's Homekeepers program for just $19.95, call 1-800-229-0059 for credit card orders, or send a gift of at least $19.95 to Homekeepers, P.O. Box 6922, Clearwater, Florida 33758. Be sure to note the program number which appears on your screen.
Parsley, impacting the world with the gospel of Jesus Christ.
God really does have more in store for you than you ever dreamed possible, and I want to invite you to join the millions around the world who tune in to Breakthrough here on CTN Satellite weekdays at 9 a.m. Eastern for prophetic preaching to turn your life right side up.
Breakthrough with Rod Parsley, weekday mornings at 9 on CTN.
To know that if you're not ready to be a mom, someone else is. You just have to know where to find her.
Bible is the best way to read, listen to, and share the Bible on your iPhone, iPad, iPod Touch, or Android device. I'm Brian, and let me tell you about this great app. With Bible is, you can read the Bible anytime and anywhere. Even combine your reading and listening in hundreds of languages and versions. Simply share the Bible on Facebook, Twitter, SMS, and email. Experience the Bible like never before. Look for Bible Is in the App Store or Android Market today. Bible Is. Read, listen, share.
God's love, elevating, energizing,